Stress is different from trauma, and stop calling everything stress. Stop calling it chronic stress. I am worried about both the unresolved and known, but I'm especially worried about the unresolved and unknown trauma. And that's what starts to make us sick, to think of an incomplete response as I took in a breath and then never exhaled. And I can only do that so many times. Inhale, inhale, inhale. All of these incomplete responses that our nervous system did the inhale, never was able to exhale. And so it stays braced, it stays guarded, and all of the physiology that comes with that.
Welcome to the Vitalist podcast, where healing meets wonder. This is your space to gain transformative knowledge, deepen your mind-body connection, and awaken your human spirit. If you're ready to connect with your innate potential, embrace life's challenges, and expand what you believe is possible, this is the place. Get ready to slow down, be moved, and live like a true vitalist.
Well, hello everyone. I'm Dr. Sarah, and I'm here with Dr. Aimie Apigian, a double board certified MD in preventative and addiction medicine, and the author of the latest book, The Biology of Trauma, which, if you haven't read it, is incredible. And we are very excited to be here to talk to you about this topic of trauma and how the body stores experiences and why the body stores experiences. But I would love to start with how you define trauma, because I feel like a lot of people can't necessarily relate to that word if it's not a big enough trauma.
As a physician, I define trauma as anything that caused a trauma response in the body. And so I lay out the 5 steps that our physiology does in response to first a stress, and then if that stress becomes a trauma. So for me, I'm really just measuring the changes in one's physiology. Did your body have a physiological response that classified it as different than stress, more than stress, then to the body, that was a trauma, whether or not we understand it logically?
Okay, well, take us on that journey of stress, how you classify stress and which of the steps fall into stress, and then what brings us into trauma.
Absolutely. So stress is this physiology of high energy. And the stress is intended to be a response, a state that moves us to take action. All of the neurochemicals, all of the hormones, all of the physiological shifts that are happening in the stress state are really intended just for one single purpose: make us move. This is exactly what we need if we are in fight or flight. Those are the 2 terms that describe this stress state. And we know those well. We're familiar with those terms. If I'm going to fight, well, then I need energy to fight. But I'm definitely moving if I'm going to fight you. If I'm going to run away from you, well, then I'm also moving, and I also need energy to run away from you. So the stress physiology is entirely focused on how can I make more energy and use up that energy. It's both. Because if my body's making energy but not able to actually get it to the places that need it, it's not doing anyone any good. Same is true for if there are other factors at play where my body's not actually able to make the energy that I need. Either way, I'm going to be in what we call a thwarted movement situation, where I want to move, I want to take action for self-defense, self-preservation, but I can't. And that is the moment where in my book I talk about hitting the wall. It's a metaphorical wall, but it's that wall of I can't defend myself. And that scenario can be created from something outside of us, where we may actually be trapped and powerless, or it can come from within, and my own body has its movement thwarted because of the lack of ability to make enough energy for me or to utilize that energy.
what is taking place? Like, how does the body decide this situation is stressful? And then what's deciding that we're now moving into that critical line of overwhelm?
Yeah, so we can think of these different responses as different states. I think of different states as different gears in my car. And I can't be in two different gears at the same time. I can't be in reverse and in forward drive at the same time, for example. Or if you drive a stick shift, you can't be in sixth gear and in first gear at the same time. So something is shifting the state within us. And when that state is shifted, it's a whole body shift. So what is deciding that? Well, that's our neuroception. Neuroception is our nervous system. It is not our brain and the central nervous system as much as it is the autonomic nervous system. Because the autonomic nervous system, its function in life, in our body, is to keep us alive. And so moment by moment, based on all this information that it's gathering, like the dashboard on our car, it's making the decision, what state would be the best one for me to be in at the moment in order to best survive? Is it sixth gear or is it first gear? Or is it reverse? Or is it just stop? What state is going to best serve my survival at this moment? So this neuroception is what is driving our responses and our states, which is why it's not a logical decision for us to freeze, fawn, shut down, or react. It's not a logical decision in that moment because this is a subconscious layer that has picked up information of the degree of threat that we are in. And based on the degree of threat, it is going to put us in the state which best serves that response.
So if the autonomic nervous system is not part of the central nervous system, where does it live?
The autonomic nervous system is composed of two different nerves. One is going to be your sympathetic nervous system. That's the chain of nerves that runs down your spine. That's responsible for the activation, that upregulation of energy, that high energy state of stress. The vagus nerve is actually what communicates both ventral vagal or parasympathetic, or what I call calm alive, but also the freeze and shutdown. And which message it sends to the body depends on which train leaves the train station. So we have these different train stations in our brain stem, and based on the degree of threat or safety that our nervous system decides is happening, it will decide which train is the best train to leave that station.
Okay.
So it's the autonomic nervous system that's really a part of these, again, I want to use the word subconscious. This is below our conscious control. It involves aspects in different areas of the brain itself. Brain stem is a large part of our autonomic nervous system because then that controls these two branches, the sympathetic and the parasympathetic.
So if you and I were in the same situation and one of the train leaving in my body was calm and alive and perhaps you activated a sympathetic response, why does everyone kind of have their own filter and experiences so uniquely to who they are?
When we think of the dashboard of information that our nervous system is using to decide which state we are in, we want to look at what's actually on that dashboard. Now, when we're driving a car, we do use our dashboard to know, am I safe to drive my car right now? And so before you drive out of your driveway, you look at your dashboard and you get information about your oil level, your gasoline level, your tire pressure, your engine temperature. And if everything looks good, well, then it's safe to drive your car. It's the same thing that it is with our body. There's this dashboard of information. And so your dashboard will have different information than my dashboard. And it literally is this collection of biometrics, of biology, of experiences and associations. And so based on our prior life experiences, it will have this filter, and that filter will tell us whether the world is generally a safe place to drive around in, or whether it's generally an unsafe place. And we should always have our guard up. We should always be hypervigilant. Why? Because that's how we stay safe. And if I had that filter, if I have that lens, and you don't because you maybe had a very different childhood experience, you can already see how our nervous system state will be different, even though we are in the same situation. We are driving the same road. But I have this lens that everything could be dangerous, and you don't. I have this lens that no one can really be trusted. You don't have that lens. You are able to say, some people can be trusted, some people not so much, but some people can. And so depending on the lens that we have does depend on our baseline default state and how much threat we already perceive, even when there actually is no threat at the moment.
And is there a formative period of time in our development that's the most important, that sets up these filters?
Yes. Now, the most formative period of time is going to be when our nervous system is developing. It's very different to have a life experience of your trust shattered if you've already had a formative development that informed you that the world is generally safe and exciting and a great place to be curious about learning. And if that experience happens after you've had this programming in your nervous system, it's going to be recorded as an exception to the rule. Versus if this is an experience, and usually because of these formative years, it's not just one, it's the whole family dynamic, for example, then that is informing you that this is the world. It's not an exception. This is the world. And so we look at our early years, and what's been fascinating for me to see is that we already have our attachment responses. We already have our attachment filter in place by 4 months of age.
Wow.
We used to think that your attachment style really wasn't developed until 7 or 8 years old. And then with further information from Mary Ainsworth and her further work on John Bowlby's attachment studies, it was more decided, no, it's closer to 3 or 4. But the still face experiments by Ed Tronick showed that by 4 months of age, an infant already has their filter for whether they perceive the world as generally a welcoming place or a place that's hard to survive in.
Wow.
Isn't that incredible?
That's incredible.
And then you think of that infant that's 4 months of age. Their nervous system already has this default tone. Think of it as the thermostat in your home. Is it set to 71? Is it set to 73? We each have our own set point for our nervous system of where our nervous system likes to ride. Some of us like to ride more in sympathetic, and that's our normal. That's what's comfortable to us. Some people tend to be more on the heavy, shut down, depressed, kind of like Eeyore with Pooh. And that's their set point. And that's their default. Not that they can't move around. It's just that's their set point. And now compound that set point by years, by decades. And now you understand why someone can be developing a chronic health condition in their 30s, 40s, 50s, and wonder, why now? Where did this come from? Oh, this must be because my genes, my genetics, it runs in the family. And so much of it is no, it's been developing underneath the surface with your nervous system, and it's now just manifesting in disease. But it's been building all along. That's why I call it the biology of trauma. That biology of trauma will always create symptoms, conditions, and diagnoses. It's just a matter of time and when.
So what do you say to the people that say, but I had a great childhood, but you can sense that their tone might be shifted into a baseline of more sympathetic tone?
This is why I often don't start with that, because what I start with is I just want to look at your life today. I don't want to look at your past. I don't want to look at your childhood, because then we're just going to argue about, well, was that trauma? Was that not? And that is irrelevant, because if it has been resolved or never existed, I'm not worried about it. Great. It's not going to affect you. But as a physician, I am worried about both the unresolved and known, but I'm especially worried about the unresolved and unknown trauma. And how I determine that is based on what I see in their nervous system now. And so I look at 3 areas: what's going on in your life, in your relationships, and your physical health. And when it is trauma, because it involves the nervous system, it's going to show up in all 3 areas. It never will only be your physical health, but your relationships are great. No, it's going to be in your life, in your relationships, and in your physical health.
So that's how you can differentiate if it's purely lifestyle or an unprocessed traumatic response that's still playing out in your physiology.
Yes. And again, I am more concerned about the unresolved and unknown, because that causes more damage to our biology than if it's unresolved, but we know about it.
Sure.
And maybe we're choosing to avoid it. Maybe we're just not knowing how to deal with it. Either one is better if I know about it than if I don't even know about it, because my body has then become so disconnected that it accumulates even more damage because of the disconnect between me, myself, and my body.
So what do you say? I know you have trauma history, trauma surgeon experience, right? And we say in our studio, like, the body has this natural affinity for well-being and for life. So what do you say to the person that they feel as if their body is betraying them? So how do you have that conversation of like, no, the body is actually storing this on purpose, and this is as comfortable as it is actually serving you?
So my experience as a surgeon really helped me also come to the same conclusion, that the body is designed for well-being. It's designed to heal itself. And so when I was done with a surgery and I closed them up, I didn't worry about their healing. I knew that my job was to create the environment for healing, not to actually try to control the healing itself. So I'm going to be looking at the skin incision. What do I need to do to provide the environment around that incision that it will heal itself? Well, I need to keep it dry. I may bring in some antibiotic cream. I'm going to be checking it every day. I'm going to be providing the person good nutrition so that I'm providing the environment for healing. When they didn't heal, it was always because something else was going on. Maybe there was an infection underneath. Maybe we missed a pocket of pus. Maybe their nutrition isn't optimized. So I look at it as the blocks to healing that can happen And that's what I go and find. I still don't focus on like the healing, have to control the healing. I look at what are the blocks to healing, because the body will always naturally move to health and well-being. So it's the same thing with trauma. The body is naturally designed to be able to go through very hard, horrible experiences and to come out the other side and be able to recover and reset to a sense of safety, not stay in that danger mode, hypervigilance. It might happen again. I'm having PTSD. I'm having triggers. Now I have to stay home and isolate. That was never how our body was designed to move through life. It's designed to know naturally how to get back to a place of being able to trust, not just others, but myself. So if that is not happening, then there's just a block. Somehow, we have not created the environment that the body needs to recover and reset to safety. So I'm still not going to then focus and try to control the healing process. My job is to find what is blocking my body's ability to naturally do the healing process itself.
So what do you find are the most common blocks in creating and inviting that?
There are 3 categories of blocks. And so I think of it as the mind level is one block. This would be how we talk to ourselves, how we talk about ourselves. Then there's the body level or the somatic level, and then there's the biology level. Each one of these will be a block if we don't know to address it.
Okay.
So let's talk about the body. Let's talk about the somatic level. The somatic level is where implicit memories are stored. The explicit memories of the actual event and what happened and the logical sequence, the timeline, that's all stored in our hippocampus.
Right.
But the implicit memories get stored in our nervous system and its reactions. What does that mean? That means that if we are in a car accident and now we are driving down that same stretch of road, but it's a different day. We know that we are safe. And in our mind, we can scout out and see, I am not in danger. However, what do you notice your body doing? Your body starts breaking out in a sweat. Your hands start gripping the steering wheel. Your heart starts beating. And your mind, of course, is like, this is the stupidest thing. And the body is like, I'm in danger. I'm going to die. That's the implicit memory that's being activated. How does it get activated? The implicit memory gets stored by associations. Meaning, when you see that tree was associated with the sound of skidding tires in your memory. That tree was associated with realizing that the car was coming right at you. And so the tree is now the trigger for this implicit memory. That tree has been associated with danger, danger, danger. Even though our mind can look at the tree and be like, it's a tree. So that's the implicit memory, which is why you can walk into a room and your body starts having a reaction and you have no idea why. It's because it has smelled something that somehow got associated at some point in your life with danger. This is where mold sensitivity comes in. People can walk into a room and be like, mold, danger, 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 danger. Why? Because their smell has become associated with danger, even though the mind is like, I don't see any mold. So the somatic and body level is one of the biggest pieces that those in medicine forget to do. They don't know to do that. And yet the somatic level will keep us held back in that trauma response because of its associations. So somatic work will be very important for anyone with chronic health conditions. And then we look at the actual biology. This is the piece that the therapists forget to bring in. And yes, we can look at how trauma became our biology and created imbalances, deficiencies, but we can then also see what's the impact of that deficiency or imbalance on my nervous system. That inflammation that the trauma response created, what is that inflammation now doing to my nervous system? Inflammation is a sign of danger. It's a signal of danger, danger, danger to your nervous system, especially if it is inflammation that's around your nervous system, like brain inflammation, like those with a history of a head injury, whiplash, concussion, or babies born premature. They all had that brain inflammation.
Yeah.
That is a very strong cue or signal of danger to our nervous system so that everything can be great in our life. And yet we feel anxious or we're going into overwhelm and are feeling the collapse and the depression and the heaviness. And we think that we need to go on a mood medication when actually it's now our own biology that is no longer creating the environment for healing, but it's promoting more dysregulation. And that is why when I work with someone, I am looking at every one of those levels, each of those levels, and I'm always addressing something at those levels at the same time. I need to have you change the way that you talk to yourself. I need you to no longer think that your thoughts are truth. I need you to know that you can have a thought that you can just let it float down the river. You don't actually need to think about it or stay with it. But then we need to work with these implicit memories because I can't have you being triggered all the time by these associations in your tissues and your nervous system. I need your actual tissues and posture and body to be in a state in the environment that promotes healing, just as much as I need your biology to promote safety and not more of a sense of danger.
I think this is a really good and important point of your nerve system is constantly scanning external and internal. We forget about the inside.
We forget about the inside. And yet that's its home. It's like living with a monster in your home. Are you ever going to feel safe? No. No.
So interesting. Well, I think this is a really key point for people to understand is that our biology is this process in time. But I think we live in such a mechanistic culture where we think we were made of parts and today is just representative of today. But our mind processes time and our body processes time so differently. So how do you explain to people that IBS, mast cell activation, chronic fatigue has been building up in your system for decades? How do you get them to really wrap their mind around that?
Honestly, I don't even try. Yeah. Again, because I am going to first just work with what's showing up in their life today.
Yeah.
And I find that when I do that, then it unveils these deeper layers that they weren't aware of before, but it's unveiled through an experience rather than me trying to convince them of information. And this is how it usually goes. I'm working with them and I'm guiding a somatic or body-based exercise to help them create a sense of safe enough right here, right now. And when they reach that, their body doesn't stay in relaxation well. It falls all the way down into heaviness and they start feeling really tired and they may fall asleep on me and they are super embarrassed about it. And I'm thinking, this is normal. And what's just happened is that their body uses the sympathetic fear to stay out of that collapse and that exhaustion that is underneath the surface. And so as soon as I take that fear away, guess what can now surface? The overwhelm, or if we want to call it the trauma response. We use the term chronic functional freeze in the therapy circles. This is what that is. This is what it looks like. This underlying overwhelm, collapse, heaviness that we are so good at covering up, and especially with the mast cell activation. That is generating adrenaline. That is generating histamine. That is generating these hormones that give us energy. And so you take that away and our exhaustion surfaces. And that's when I then ask them, does this feel familiar at all? Have you ever felt this before? And the answer, of course, is always yes. And then I say, tell me the first time you remember feeling this. I don't even try to give it a word. It's just this low, low place. And they often start thinking back to my 20s. Well, actually, now that you think about it, I had some experiences in my teenage years. Well, actually, now that I'm really thinking about it, I remember experiences in my childhood. This feels familiar from feeling alone, feeling misunderstood, feeling like I didn't belong, feeling like I had to take care of everyone else. I had to take care of everything. I had to balance the mood for my parents. I had to be the responsible one. I had to be the quiet one. I had to be the peacemaker. I had to be the accomplished one. And they start thinking back on when this actually started, when they actually started feeling like it was just too much. And that's how then they come to the conclusion and awareness that this runs pretty deep. And what I never saw as trauma, I can now see as something that at that time in my life did overwhelm me. It was too much for me at that age, at that time. And that's how I like them to come to that awareness, rather than me teaching and telling them information, because they always resist that. It's always the experience that then they come to that awareness. This is so true when it comes to the nervous system, just in general. The nervous system does not respond to information as much as it responds to an experience that has a sensation with it, a body sensation. Was that body sensation good? Was that body sensation bad? Was that body sensation so unbearable that you disconnected in order to not have to feel what was happening in your body? That's what the nervous system responds to. So my job as the guide then is just to create the experience for someone, create the experience for them to be able to see underneath the surface, and then the experiences that allow them to have the environment for healing to now happen, rather than continue to perpetuate these experiences that only promote more dysregulation and disconnection.
A lot of what you're saying right now is reliant on an ability to feel embodied.
Most people have no idea that they're not feeling their body.
I feel like we trade feeling our body for being safe and feeling attached, and we feel disconnected. So if someone can't work with a guide like you that's going to create an environment, are there certain practices that they can practice alone to bring their awareness back into their body and invite that level of safety?
All right, I'm going to be very honest with you. I have never seen someone, including myself, because you're not talking about me. I have never seen anyone be able to go from, I don't really feel, I just like to think and analyze and study and learn, to be able to then go to learning how to feel all by themselves. That is a piece that needs someone, something else to show me how you do that, because I have no idea. And if I had previously learned how to feel and then just stopped feeling, well, then I at least have a map in my brain back to what it used to be like. But for so many of us, we disconnected very early in childhood. So we don't even know anything different to have a map back home to ourselves.
Yeah.
And so that's where I have found it necessary for me to come in and say, I get you. That's who I used to be. Let me show you how. Let me teach you these skills. And then you can do it on your own and you don't need me.
Right.
I don't want you to become dependent on me. But how can we arrive somewhere when we don't have the map and we don't even know what it would look like to get there? So most people, and I just say most because I don't like to say everyone, but really it is everyone. This is our world. This is our culture. This is our society. This is our educational system. This is our medical system. So that is why everyone in the Western world, at least, has a very hard time feeling and knowing what their body is saying and how to respond to their body. I've even had yoga teachers and body workers come through my course. They think that they're the experts because I am the yoga teacher. I guide people into their body. And they realize I actually had no idea how disconnected I was from my own body because I've never felt any different. So this is where we all start. And it's not a prerequisite to be able to feel your body to do this work. That is the first step.
Okay, so that's the first step. And then what else is required to metabolize the experience? Like, why do experiences get stuck? And then what's required to move them through?
Yeah, so without this ability to reset to safety, we do have experiences that then remain incomplete. And I like to think of an incomplete response as I took in a breath and then never exhaled. So it wasn't a complete breath. And I can only do that so many times, inhale, 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 before I'm in deep trouble and my physiology is screaming at me because we're going to die. We've got so much CO2, we've got to complete. And that's what starts to make us sick, is when we have all of these incomplete responses that our nervous system did the inhale, never was able to exhale. And so it stays braced, it stays guarded, and all of the physiology that comes with that. So at this point then, what can we do about it, knowing that that's what happened and why the body held on? We can complete responses now, and it does involve all three layers, mind, body, and biology, because since the body has held on for so long, it has shifted our biology. And so this is where I refer to it as repair tools. I'm going to come in with repair tools. I'm going to bring your nervous system into the shop. We're going to get some work done. I'm going to use my repair tools. And at first, the repair that I'm going to do is really focused on just creating a shift to safety. And so if you have been in 6th gear and pushing your nervous system aggressively to keep going, or if you've put on the emergency brake and you're stopped at the side of the road, I need to get your car back into the healthy gear before anything else can come. And that's often not where people are starting. People are starting with this idea of, but I must process my past. I must talk about my stories. I must share what happened to me. And that's how we're going to do this. And it's not true. In order to even do that effectively meaning it's going to have an outcome that we want, I need to first get your car running well, or else we're not going anywhere.
Yeah.
And so the repair tools at first just look like I'm going to have you start connecting with your body, responding to your body, befriending your body. We are going to form a relationship with your body. I'm going to teach you how to do that because I know you don't know how. And in the process, you're going to learn how to feel, but not just feel. You're going to learn the skills to do something in response so that when you notice that you're back revved up in activation, you know how to bring your own state down. When you notice yourself going into overwhelm, you know how to shift your system out of that. That's the whole first phase. There is no processing of stories and our past in that first phase.
Right.
That would be the equivalent of me asking you to jump into the deep end of the pool without teaching you how to swim first.
Right.
We're not going to jump into stories where just the very emotions that come up because of those stories would likely make you drown in your own emotions. I need you to be able to swim so that when those emotions come up, we can still stay working on the story. We can still stay feeling safe enough. We can ride those waves. We can have those emotions actually move through, because if not, it's going to just be one more time that you got overwhelmed. You're not completing the response, and it's reinforcing the very patterns that we're trying to change.
Yes.
So once we have the foundational skills, now we can look at what's happening next. But here's what actually happens. Most people don't realize this, but when they come to create safety, and now we can also kind of exchange the word space for safety. Once we've come in and we've learned and used these skills to create safety and space, we know from the law of physics that things fill up space. So what starts to surface when we create safety? Grief, anger, fear, panic. Those are the things that move in to fill the space that we just created. We were thinking, oh, I'm going to feel safe. No, you're not. You're going to create a moment of safety, and the next moment you're going to be crying and wondering, what just happened? Did I do it wrong? No, you created space with safety, and what is underneath fills up that space. Now, to feel those emotions, to feel grief, anger, fear, panic, is very stressful. And that is why our body and our mind has tried to keep those things shoved down. And we numb, we avoid, we distract in order to not feel those things because it's so stressful to feel those things. And so unless you've learned how to hold more stress and not go into overwhelm, you're going to go into overwhelm just simply with the grief that surfaces or the anger that surfaces. And so now we need to be able to help your body hold more stress and not be overwhelmed. We're still not even ready to talk about stories of the past. We're still not even there, and we don't need to be there because stuff is surfacing. We don't need to go excavate. We just get to work with what is the body surfacing. That is what is ready to be worked on. So then we do that phase, and that's phase 2. Learning to use our repair tools to be able to hold more stress and be able to move through these emotions that come up and surface when we create the safety and the space. Once we've got that and we're really skilled at that, now we're ready to work on stories of the past. That is phase 3. And so for each of these phases, phase 1, phase 2, phase 3 of the healing journey, each of those phases is still going to need mind work, body work, biology work. And each of those layers will hold us back if we don't work on that. So that's what the healing journey looks like. It's this phased approach. Each phase has a very specific purpose and intention and repair tools. And then we get to that last phase where we're actually ready to work on a story, because with the skills that we have, we can work on a story and not go into the story.
And at the end of phase 3, is it over? Are you done?
So at the end of phase 3, there is no end of phase 3. Phase 3 is this like, it's a longevity aspect where it lasts as long as you last. And so I see it as the spiral staircase where you are going to new heights. You're also going to new depths. And there's always the next layer. And you get to see what surfaces, and that's how you know what your next layer is. Even with that phase, you don't need to go excavating and digging. You just gotta wait, and believe me, life will throw you something else. And it will feel familiar. It will be a deeper layer of an attachment or relationship insecurity that you've held. And you thought that you had worked on it before, and you had. But now it's a different flavor. Now it's a different layer. Now it's at a new level. And so that's why phase 3 is really an exciting phase, because how high can you go on your spiral staircase? Well, I don't know, but let's find out. There's so much possibility for expansion. There's possibilities. Even that is now moving into hope. And what else do I want to do? It allows us to ask the question, well, how alive do I want to be? We couldn't ask those questions before because we were just surviving. But now in phase 3, how alive do I want to be? And when I get to that level, I can see that, oh, there's a new level of being alive.
Which I think you brought up a really important word is hope. And that the body is incredibly resilient and it has this affinity or this ability to reprogram itself and sort of run new patterns. How fast do you see that's happening in people? Like, how fast can you see these changes within someone's, not just their, it's like when someone walks in a room, they have this different glow about them. It's on every level, right?
You know, what I found is that it's never as fast as you want, but it is faster than you think.
Mm.
And everyone who comes in, I mean, they wait so long to come in, right, Sarah? They wait
Yes.
so long to come
They
in.
wait a long time.
So by the time they come in, they wanted it done yesterday.
Yes.
So it's never as fast as you want. However, given the perspective of how long this has been playing out, it's faster than you think. And that's really exciting. When you follow the phases, it is faster than you think it will be. Most people don't know to approach their trauma healing with a certain sequence. They just kind of jump in anywhere with whatever. Throw spaghetti at the wall. Let's see if that works. Not realizing that there's very specific science that guides the sequence and these phases. And if you follow the phases, it is much faster than what you think.
I'm really curious because you don't speak like a typical medical doctor. Did you learn all of this in med school, or how did you stumble into this work?
Yes, there's a question that I get asked sometimes around, well, do you practice what you preach? And my response is always, nope. I teach what I live. I teach what I have lived. For me, it started working with adopted children. Worked with some of the hardest children in the system. Had been adopted from either foster care system or other countries around the world that are known for their harsh conditions in the orphanages. And these children were having such a hard time letting themselves trust and love their adoptive parents. And I rolled up my sleeves and I was like, I think it's possible. And that's where it started. That opened doors, that opened a window into me understanding my own attachment insecurities that I had never even seen before. And then I became the patient. And I got chronic fatigue syndrome. I got autoimmunity. I was on 2 mood medications for anxiety and depression. And I didn't know if it was possible to reverse that impact on my health once it had already become that far along. So I didn't know, because I'd never seen it done. I had no model for this. All I had been told from medical school was, this is the outcome of these kinds of past experiences. And it's just symptom management at that point. And I didn't want that for myself, but I didn't know if anything else was possible. So I started figuring out what I could do, and this is how it all came to life. And then once I realized how much I had changed and how I was able to show up in the world and be there for people in the way that I really wanted to, I decided I think other people would want to learn how to do this too.
I'm also curious about your perspective on gentle touch. So we're chiropractors by training. We use a really gentle form of touch to work with patterns within the nervous system. How do you see that shifting neurological patterns in the work? I know you have some somatic training too.
I see touch do magic. Our body responds to touch. When we have a history of touch becoming associated with danger, well, part of the process will be repairing that association and creating new experiences of safe touch. But for those people who don't have that association, those places within themselves that go to fear, overwhelm, I'm all alone, a simple touch can shift all of that without words. It's one of the most powerful ways that we can communicate safety with another person, but also with ourselves. And so this is a big part of what I teach.
Well, I guess I'm so curious, if you could have everyone on this planet understand one thing about trauma and their potential to heal, what would that one thing be?
The one thing for me would be to get them to understand that stress is different from trauma. And stop calling everything stress. Stop calling it chronic stress. Because when we do that, we minimize the awareness that, no, this is beyond stress, which means I really need to take action. It's like, do I call my physician for an appointment next week, or do I go to the emergency room right now? If they could realize that overwhelm would be an emergency room visit, that is urgent. And each person needs the skills to shift themselves out of that. But as long as you're still calling it stress, you're not even going to know that it's an emergency.
Yeah. So what are the sneaky language cues that you hear in people's description of what they're experiencing in their bodies?
And I intentionally ask these things. And so I hear phrases like, oh, it's just too much. Ding, ding, ding. That's overwhelm. That's not stress. If they're going to say, wow, it's a lot going on right now, that is stress mode. But once they shift and they say, it's just too much, that's overwhelm.
So where can people find you, work with you?
People can find me at biologyoftrauma.com. I have a book resource page there as well. So when they go to read the book, they will see that in chapter 1, for example, I will share the art narrative exercise with them. And in chapter 2, I'll share the nervous system journal with them. So I have those downloads on that book resource page for free for them. And then that's where they can find free guides, like my guide on steps to identify and heal trauma, and find information on my podcast and YouTube channel.
All right. Well, thank you so much, Dr. Aimie.
If you like this episode, share it with a friend. For more conversations filled with awe and wonder, be sure to subscribe to the Vitalist podcasts. Till next time.